Hearing. Thank you all for your attendance tonight. We've got a great deal of information in store for you. It's a reflection of this school community under the leadership of Ms. Carrie Messler, work that's been done collaboratively, focused, and intentional for the good of every child that walks through these doors. I'm Executive Director of Elementary Schools, Joe DiCaprio. I'm going to kick things off as we walk through some basic information before we get to Kane specifically. A little bit about our district. As you'll see everywhere and anywhere in the city of Schenectady, we are about improving in all areas related to excellence in teaching and learning, equity, engagement, and efficiency. All of our kids deserve our best. And it's words in a vision, but we live it through our actions. Everybody counts, everybody learns. We're going to get there in a positive way for every child. It may not happen immediately, but it will happen eventually. And lastly, our values are all around working together, learning in all areas, and making sure we're equitable in all we do. So ahead of that, we have 4 foundational pillars that make up our district strategic plan. And our plan drives all of our thoughts, all of our actions, and everything with an intention. So when we talk about the plan, it's broken up into 4 pillars. Our first one is about student and graduate success. What are we doing programmatically to ensure that students are succeeding in life beyond the walls of our buildings? We know that in order to help get there, it involves passionate people. That's our second pillar. How do we engage, hire, employ, and then retain people that are passionate about our children, that are passionate about what happens to them after they leave our building? Well, we know we can't do it alone, so that gets to our third pillar, engaging in partnership with our families, with our community. Our city's incredible. It's built on the cornerstone of so much that reflects in our society. Hard work, dedication, diversity, not just in how we look, but in how we live. And we come together in very different areas of this city as one community. It's a beautiful thing, and generally it happens in school. So we know that these partnerships, when we access and work together collaboratively, we're going to make faster gains toward that student and graduation success together than we would alone. Lastly, when we engage these 3 pillars, we want to do so efficiently. We want our systems to reflect fiscal responsibility, commitment to maintaining longevity in effective programming, being respectful stewards of our tax dollar, and making sure all of our resources are allocated in an equitable manner to all of our students. That includes how we operate with staff, faculty, and families systematically. So those are the 4 pillars that drive the work that happens in Keane, but in every one of our 17 buildings. So all of this leads to talking about Keane specifically. Receivership is a very tricky thing. There's a lot of nuances that Ms. Messler is going to guide you through, but the number one thing that leads this work is our vision. We need a purpose, we need a goal. There's been a lot of work put in over the years under Ms. Messler's leadership around this vision. And as I said earlier, these are words, but they are truly lived in the walls of this building by the adults and the children that work together every day. Every child can be successful. That is believed in this building. Students, staff, parents, there's a love of learning that you feel when you walk into these hallways. It exists. It's not just in words. You feel it. Kids are excited to be here. They're excited to see each other. And with the return to what is the gold standard of learning, in-person instruction, you feel it even more so than in the past, because we went away from it for a little while. And now that we're back, you see kids excited to be around books, excited to be around activities that include talking to one another about what's to come. And lastly, we drive this excitement through a very strategic and culturally relevant curriculum, knowing that reaching all of our learners in a manner that's diversified, but values that diversification, is projected in what they learn about and how it's taught to them. So that's that culturally relevant piece. And this makes up the components of William C. Kane's vision. This vision drives what you're about to hear in greater detail from Ms. Messler. Ms. Bessler, talk to us about Keane receivership.
Sure. So I think, you know, I kind of want to start out, you know, Joe did a really great job kind of introducing, you know, where we are as a district, and then as we kind of drilled down to look at the building level and how our vision also supports the district's vision, and how we were really strategic. It took us a year to work through that vision statement as a team. Our anti-racist building leadership team was pivotal in the work of thinking about what our kids wanted and what our kids needed, and what it really means to learn, and the joy that comes from learning, and curiosity and interest. So we vetted the vision statement through our parents. We asked students for feedback. We asked our teachers for feedback. And through that process, we came to a really great place around our vision statement overall. So thank you, Joe, for kind of capturing that for us. You know, part of what's interesting about being a receivership school is, while we'll share with some information with you about how we became a receivership school and where we are now in that work, it's a struggle, right? Like, it's what we're saying is that, you know, we had low performing scores in English language arts, in math, in science, and in attendance rates, as well as we had more work to do around community engagement and family community connections. And so the receivership work, though, where does this concept come from? What is receivership all about? I just wanted to take a few minutes to just kind of talk about how a school gets to this place. And so in New York State, we have an accountability system that sits underneath federal guidelines around an Every Student Succeeds Act. It's sometimes called ESSA. And in the New York State accountability system, New York State says, hey, when we want to look at schools across the state, we want to give you some benchmarks to hit, and we want to give you some assessments to give to students so we can see how students in Kane compare to the rest of New York State. And so we're held to indicators around how our students are growing and progressing in English language arts. So this looks like the 3, 4, 5 English language arts tests that we take oftentimes in March or April. This is also the math state test that we take in oftentimes April or May. Our science state test, which our 4th graders take, typically in May and June. And then we are also held to an attendance rate. We're always looking to make sure that our children are attending 95% of the school year or more. When we look at something like chronic absenteeism, that's a place where we're seeing that our students are missing more than 10% of the school year. And we're also, not only are we looked at in each of these categories, but then the data is subdivided by subgroups. So we also look at how are different groups, racial categories, genders doing and performing, students with disabilities. What are we noticing about our different populations in our school? And so all of our data is kind of separated by subgroups, so we can see, is one subgroup outperforming potentially another. It is a state law around our accountability system that requires the lowest performing schools to make achievement gains. And schools have 1 to 2 years, once they've kind of been identified as saying, like, this school looks like it's struggling. The schools have 1 to 2 years to make gains depending on their level of identification and designation. Once the school has been identified, the district is ultimately responsible for ensuring the following. One is that we have a community engagement team for each of our identified schools, which Kane does have a community engagement team with many of our teachers, our staff, and we have parents as part of that team. And that we are also held to conduct a public hearing in the identified school. And so that was what the function of tonight is to make sure that the public knows that we recognize that we are an identified school, and that we have strategies in place and interventions in place to address areas where we need to turn our school around. And ultimately, the intent of receivership, while it can sometimes feel not so great that we have this title upon us as a school as part of legislation, but one of the things is that the true intent from the state is to help our school address barriers that we experience to turn our school around. And so the true intent of the law is to make sure that we can do everything we can, that we can remove any barriers possible so that our students here at Kane Elementary School can be successful. So that's a lot about state law and federal legislation, but what does it really mean? So what happened to Kane Elementary School? So in 2015, 2017, between those years, our data, again, on English language arts, math tests, that science test, our attendance rates, all showed a decline over 2 years. And that decline red flagged us to New York State to say, watch out, this school is struggling, and we struggled for 2 years. And at that point, we went into receivership. When you go into receivership, basically what the state says is that you appoint your superintendent as receiver. So Mr. Soler, our superintendent, does serve as receiver for Kane Elementary School. He's allowed to make local changes, things like adjustments to Kane's specific budget. How we can think about our budget differently than other schools might have to think about their budget. We can think about our academic program differently. So what are we offering for English language arts instruction or literacy instruction or math instruction? Maybe we need to think differently about something at Kane. And the superintendent can have that power as a receiver to do that at Kane Elementary School. We can look at staffing differently here at Kane Elementary School. PD stands for professional development. We might need to offer our teachers and our staff something different than some of our other schools do. He can also look at union bargaining agreements, so the teachers union, the paraprofessionals union, the administrators union, to make different types of agreements with those groups of people. He can also supersede Board of Education decision making. He can also have the option to convert our school to a charter school or a community school. In 2018, 2019, that year when we took the tests, the ELA, the math, the science test, when we looked at our community engagement surveys, when we did information from the public, we did hit 8 of our 10 indicators. So there's 10 indicators that we're held responsible to, and I'll share those with you in a minute. But in 18-19, we did meet 8 of those 10 indicators. In 2019-2020, folks will remember, March of 2020, we went out due to COVID, and there were no New York State tests that year. In 2020-2021, this was last year when we were co-located at Lincoln Elementary School, and 2/3 of our students actually did at-home virtual learning. We actually didn't have very many students test for English language arts and math, and so the state made the determination to kind of do what they said is do no harm, meaning that they weren't going to hold us accountable for the few students that did test, because they knew that they weren't seeing a good population of our total population of students, because many of those students were home. In 2021 and 2022, that's this school year, because we've made 1 year of progress back in the 2018-2019 school year, we have this year, 2020 to 2022, to meet all 10 demonstrable progress indicators. That would be our second year. So you may be saying, like, what are those demonstrable progress indicators? What are those things that we're held to? So on the left-hand side, you're going to see a number convention, and that's really how the state identifies these indicators. But on the right gives you kind of a description of what they are. The top 3, 39, 110, and 54, are all related to how our students in grades 3, 4, and 5 perform in math. And so the first one, it looks at how did our students perform, the 3rd graders, the 4th graders, and the 5th graders. How did they perform on the math state test and growth? So how did if they're currently 5th graders, when we look at 4th grade and then we look at their test in 5th grade, did we see significant improvement as we compare it's student to student comparison from 1 year to another? Indicator 110, again, is all students and how they do as what's called a PI, or performance index. That is a one-time check, like a dipstick. How did they do? So it's a one-time check, as opposed to the one above, which is comparing 2 years of data to see what did the growth look like versus progress. And indicator 54 separates out, ED stands for our economically disadvantaged students. So students whose families live below the poverty line would be a place where we need to look at that subgroup a little bit differently. That does make up a majority of our population of students. About a little over 80% of our students do qualify for free and reduced lunch. Well, 100% do, but about 80% are flagging to kind of say that they're within this category. And they look at the gap between the students that are economically disadvantaged as compared to the students that are not. And they look to see what that gap is. Like, are we noticing that the students that are not economically disadvantaged, do they do better or worse than the students that are economically disadvantaged? And that's around our math test. The next 3, 100, 46, and 102, are all related to the English language arts test. So again, this test is something that we take in March. We will take it again this year in March. The first indicator, indicator 100, again looks at English language arts for all of our students, the performance index. How did they do just this year? So when they take this test, how did our students perform? Indicator 46 actually looks at our grades 3, 4, and 5, but it disaggregates this data by our black students and how many of them achieved a level 2 or above. So on the state test, oftentimes you've seen a child can get a level 1, a level 2, a level 3, or a level 4. A level 4 would be a top performing. It's like when you look at these tests, the kids have missed a question or two on those types of tests. And so a 4 is a very top performing student. But this category is comparing how many black students got a level 2 and above with non-black students. So it takes the black subgroup and it compares it to all the other subgroups we have as the building. So that would be our Asian subgroup, multiracial subgroup, white subgroup, Latino subgroup, and it makes this comparison either way. And the reason why that one is important and that one was identified is because historically as a building, we have struggled to meet the needs of our black student population. And then 102, again, you can see why it's picked and flagged again in grades 3, 4, and 5, English language arts, how our black students perform as a performance index. So a one-time assessment, just looking at themselves, how did the black students do this year on the English language arts test? Indicator 150 is related to our grade 4 science test. Again, how did they do? How are they going to do this one time when they take this science test? What level are they receiving? A 1, 2, 3, or a 4? Indicator 160 is called chronic absenteeism, and it looks at all of our students in kindergarten through 5th grade. And so again, chronic absenteeism means that a child is missing 10% or more of the school year. So if you were to think a school year has roughly 180 days of school, that would be 18 days absent, would flag a child to be chronically absent for the year. So then we think to ourselves, okay, where are we right now? If we're 50 days into the school year, 10% of the school year would be 5 days absent. So as a parent, if you're thinking, hey, is my child chronically absent at this point? If your child has been absent from school 5 or more days this year, they're potentially on path to be considered chronically absent for the school year. Indicator 6 is around family and community engagement. So how is it, this one is particularly about how is it that we provide two-way communication, meaning parents can tell us about how their child learns best, and just as we as teachers and staff tell parents about what are we noticing about how your child learns best, but that the communication goes both ways. Families can advocate and say, you know, I think you might want to try this with my son or daughter because I know as the best teacher that the child has, which is mommy and daddy, that this is how my child might learn best.
And part of what this specialist talked about individually, it's important to recognize her leadership and the faculty and staff here, along with Kane's and just supports from the district level. The tricky part, these are all individualized, but the trick in leadership is to connect them together and make the individual indicators mesh and find common gains as a group. And it's tricky to do, but as we walk through the plan, that's what's going to show us how to do it.
Hopefully. And then the final indicator, indicator 10, 94, asks that we provide 200 hours of what's called quality extended day learning time. And so as you can see, and you can hear the bus outside, this is our after school program. We run our after school program from about 2:15 to about 5:15, 5:30 to provide children with after school opportunities where they get academic tutoring, some social experiences, some project-based learning experiences, and that's part of the 200 hours in addition to some of the work that we do in the summertime. Allows us to qualify for the 200 hours of extended learning time. So then the question becomes, we have these 10 indicators that we have to meet this year when we take the state test and by the end of the school year. How is it that what are the barriers that we're trying to overcome to improve? What is it that we've noticed across the last few years? And what are we putting in place to address those barriers? And so one of the things that we know is that for teachers to feel the best about what they're doing in their classrooms, they need to have professional time to talk with one another, to share best practices, to brainstorm and say, you know, like this lesson didn't go as well as I thought it would have gone. What might I try tomorrow? Like what did you do in your lesson and how did it go with your kids? And how might we share best practices with one another? So we were very intentional to make sure we carved out professional learning time for our teachers. We call it PLC, Professional Learning Community, where the teachers can come together and share those best practices, and the teachers meet every day after school from 2:15 to 2:45. And that idea is that they're looking at student work, they're thinking about how's it going, and what might I need to improve either tomorrow or next week. We also know that in order for both students and teachers to grow and adjust their practices, they need to get quality feedback. And so as administrators in the building, we provide quality feedback to our teachers, and we want to make sure that our teachers are providing quality feedback to our students, kind of related to how they're performing. So if I'm a struggling reader in a classroom, how is it that my teacher is providing feedback to me to say, here you are right now, and here's where we're going to nudge you along across the next couple of weeks. Another area that we know we have a lot of work to do is around community engagement. Again, ensuring this two-way communication. We'll talk a little bit about some of the work that we've done this year, but how is it that we're getting information out to families? And how is it that families really feel part of the school as a school community, and that families feel part of the improvement efforts, that families are asking, what can we do to help? Because we know as a school, we love Kane Elementary School, we think it's a wonderful school, but we know that there's other things that we need to do here to make it the best possible school. And then our fourth strategy is around school climate revitalization. So we want to make sure that we develop school pride, both in our physical plant, so actually the way the school looks every day when children are coming into it. Does it look like an exciting place to learn and grow? Are we celebrating student work on the walls? Are we celebrating growth and progress that kids are making? Does it feel really welcoming when you come in? And that's part of what we're doing. Some of the things folks can see right off the rip is that we painted the entire school building this summer. Every single room got a fresh coat of paint. As I've mentioned before to families and in newsletters, we bought all new desks for our students. Desks where they can write with a dry erase marker, solve math problems right on their desk, erase them, and start again if they want to. We bought all brand new chairs. Our teachers got all new desks. We got new computers in the building. We have new rugs that you can see even as you're walking into the building, because when you look good, you feel good, right? Like when your house is clean and it looks nice, you walk with a different sort of swagger, right? So we wanted to make sure that our kids walk into this building and they're proud to be here. That this is a school that I want to be a Kane Dragon at. Like that's who I want to be, that's my mascot, and I'm working really hard in that place. And so we know we have more work to do to revitalize our space. I think parents can also realize we changed the main entrance around, again, to brighten it up, and to change the entrance plan off of Albany Street so that parents were diverted off of Albany Street and into the building to create safe experiences for our children entering schools. And we also know that it's not just about the physical plant, but it's also about the academic experience that our children have. I heard feedback from parents that were saying things like, I wish there were more science, STEM, STEAM experiences for my child. Where are we going with computer-based learning experience? I mean, this was a little before COVID, but now we've had a lot of computer-based experiences, but where are we going with things like computers, app development, computer science, STEM activities, STEAM activities, where parents are seeing the future is going? What is it that Kane is doing to kind of keep up with some of that work? And so, we also want to make sure that we're competitively providing a rigorous ELA curriculum or a math curriculum to ensure that our students are learning at their grade level and that they're held to very high expectations so that they can be successful on the New York State tests that we do towards the end of the year. So folks might be sitting here saying, okay, all right, it doesn't sound so great, but how do we get out of receivership? Again, we must show 2 consecutive years of progress where we meet those targets that are established by the state. So in those demonstrable progress indicators, those 10 indicators that I had shared with you, the state has given us some targets. And they're saying, they're not expecting us to be 100% from where we were. But what they're saying is in the next couple of years, we expect you to hit these targets in order for you guys to close the gap from where other schools are in New York State. And so those are called measurable indicators of progress. And so the state says, we want to see how you're moving on that path to improve. And again, we did show progress in 2018, 2019 for 8 out of the 10 indicators, so we know that there's been growth. But then when we hit COVID time and we know that going home to learn was not great for kids. I think New York State has learned that. I think that nationally we know that kids that went home to learn struggled because it's not the same as being in school and in person with your teachers. I think teachers had to learn overnight how to deliver their curriculum in a new and unique way. And we know that we lost some kids along the way because they weren't as comfortable with some of the computer skills that we were asking them to have. And so we do know that we've seen a dip since 2018, 2019, but we know we're kind of on a clear path now that we have all of our kids back in school. We're really excited, and I think it's one of the reasons why we were really pushing as a school and as a district to say, we want 100% of our kids back in person. We will wear masks, we will follow COVID protocols, but we need our kids back with us because we know that they do best in front of us every day. And we also need to know, we need to make sure that we're working together. We need to make sure that we're engaging families and our community in improvement efforts. So when the community says, what can we do to help? We have ideas, we're bringing suggestions, but then also the community is bringing suggestions to us, like, here's one thing we think we're missing around here. Maybe the school could try this. And so we're open to that feedback. We're encouraging families to ask for more. This is a receivership school. You have the right to say, I want more for my son and daughter. Please help me understand what you're doing to make sure that my child can read on grade level, that my child can compete mathematically with other peers across the state. We want to make sure that we listen to your feedback. When you say things to us about how the school could better meet your needs, what it is that could better meet your child's needs, we need to be open to that feedback and ensure that we're adjusting to be a school that's a right fit for you. And we want to make sure that we're advocating to the state, that the state understands the impact that COVID has had, especially in inner city areas. That like sometimes our schools got affected in different sorts of ways that other schools maybe in suburban areas didn't necessarily experience. And so we want to make sure that we're saying to the state, hang on a second, we're not saying that we shouldn't be held accountable, but we also want to make sure that you're being fair to the schools to say, this has been a really tricky year for us, almost 2 years. So I think it's probably easier for folks to see if you have the slideshow in front of you. This is indicator 6. I'll kind of break down some of the indicators to share with you some of the positive things that are happening at Kane Elementary School, as well as some of the places where we know we have a lot more work to do. So in indicator 6, you can see there's survey information. This is a self-reflection that we do as a building to say across these domains, I think there's 25 questions that we have to answer. How well are we doing? And you can see we've kind of gone from about 90% of the questions, about 22 of the 25 we could answer yes to, but over the course of the years we've gone up to 24 out of the 25. You may say, what is that one question where you're struggling? And the answer is we do not have a PTO. And so parents might wonder, hey, why do you keep asking us on Parent Square about joining PTO? And one of the reasons why is we need a parent-teacher organization. We have teachers that are ready to go, but we need parents. We need moms and dads to say, you know what? I'm willing to try out this investment. I want to try to do something for that school. I want to sign up to be part of a PTO. And we've been you'll see flyers out. We're recruiting on Parent-Teacher Conference Day. So we're definitely interested in pulling a group of folks together for the PTO so that we can hit 25 of our 25 indicators on that survey. This is Parent Square data. So one of the things I mentioned is a new app that Kane Elementary School is piloting called Parent Square. We are at 100% of our teachers are utilizing Parent Square as the primary method of communication. Could a teacher be texting you? Could you be calling a teacher's phone or calling the direct line into the school? Absolutely. But one of the ways we push out information and we have parents responding to us is through Parent Square. And you can see across the months from September to October how we've kind of increased our communication and primary ways that we're finding that parents are responding to the information that we have. So you'll see an increase in the numbers of direct messages in the months. We've doubled the number of direct messages back and forth, but then also we've decreased the number of what's called unregistered users in Parent Square. And some of what, as Ms. Turcotte and I kind of dig into some of these numbers, some of what we find is, as a parent, you might have listed 3 people on your emergency contact form. And where Parent Square is getting information from is that emergency form. So if grandma and grandpa are on that list, they may be unregistered users of Parent Square because we were using those names to help us figure out who should we be communicating with and have as potential people that could download Parent Square on their phones. So we're really proud of this area. You'll see some things that we've kind of put into place. We had a trunk or treat event here where we had over 100 families join us for the trunk or treat event at the end of October for Halloween. Obviously, we've had a Parent Square posts. This is one of our most liked posts, is the one about Diwali and celebrating the holiday for our families. There's a newsletter, folks have probably seen this either mailed home or in your child's backpack that we'll continue to have to keep parents up to date on information within the building. We've had Pops in the Parking Lot was one of our opening school days where we took parents on a tour of the building to meet the teacher. We had our open house event for families. We've had our parent-teacher conferences where we offered parents both an in-person or a virtual option for whatever felt easier or more comfortable for our families. And so we've done a lot of events. We also will be planning events for January, March, April, May timeframe, and then some events throughout the summer. So stay tuned for some of those events to come. Here you can see our ELA data. You'll see I've kind of put this cautious exclamation point up here because we're looking at this data pretty cautiously because of what we've seen kind of happen over time. So just to kind of explain a little bit of this information, while these are not our ELA scores, so this is not reflective of the New York State test that we took, rather this is a test that we use inside the district called STAR. And it's a computer-based test that asks kids questions that if the kids are getting the questions right, the questions get a little harder. If they get a question wrong, the questions might get a little bit easier to find out, like through computer-generated formulas, they're trying to figure out kind of where is this child as a reader. And so what the information is telling us right now in grades 3, 4, and 5 is that in 2019, in the fall of 2019, when we took this test, we had about 58 of our students reach proficiency. So STAR has a level that says your child is proficient, your child is approaching proficiency, or your child has exceeded the proficiency level. And we had about 58 students at that time. Now remember, we went to 2020, where those 5th graders became 6th graders, so some of the kids left the building. And in 2020, we had 56 students proficient in the fall of 2020. Remember, the fall of 2020 was also 2/3 of our students were virtual, and about 1/3 of our students were in person. And one of the things that we realized as a staff was that while we know that parents were being supportive with their children, there might have been some help along the way with answering some of the questions on the STAR assessment. So we're not sure how valid that number is necessarily, but parents don't want to see their children struggle at home, and we're helping kids with their assessment at home. So we're a little bit unsure about how reliable that number is, but what I can tell you is when the children came back the fall of 2021, so just this most recent October, we assessed the children here, and we have about 30 of our students proficient. So we went from 58 students proficient in 2019 to 30 students proficient. Again, these aren't the same kids, so some of these kids are now 6th graders and 7th graders, but as we look at our 3rd graders that left school in 1st grade, fall of 2020, and they're now 3rd graders, we realize that we've kind of lost some students kind of along the way for proficiency, okay? So this is why we have an exclamation point here. I don't know that this is alarming in the sense that as we compare to other schools, both internally in the district, but also as we look externally to other schools in New York State, many schools have experienced this loss of learning. That COVID had an impact on many families, and we know that we've also experienced that loss. The question is it because of COVID, or is it something related to the instruction that kids are getting here? And that's the work that we do every single day as a team.
Question.
Sure.
What interventions do you have in place to address that gap?
Great question. Thank you for that, Dr. Mason. So these are some of the things that, we knew. We knew that our kids were struggling as readers. We knew that we were having issues with reading instruction in the building, that our district curriculum was not necessarily meeting the needs of our students the way that we had hoped. So we made a large investment in a new English language arts program called Wit and Wisdom. And so that is something that's different than many of the other schools in the district, that we have purchased the Wit and Wisdom curriculum in English language arts for kindergarten through 5th grade. We've also provided all of our teachers with professional development in that product throughout the course of the summer. And they're working in their professional learning communities every single day to refine what they're learning about this new curriculum and how it's best meeting the needs of the students in their classrooms. We also purchased a program called Heggerty, which helps to teach phonemic awareness skills to our students. We knew that that was a gap that we had as a building, that many of our students were struggling with phonemic awareness skills. That's kind of like how letters sound. And when we start to put letters together, how do those letters sound? When I put vowels together, or when I put consonants and vowels together, what sounds do those letters make when we put them together? Our students were struggling in that area, so we purchased Heggerty. We also have Fundations, which is a phonics program that our teachers got all new resources for this school year to help to teach our phonics skills. These are, what are the letters and what do those letters say? And so a lot of that explicit work, especially in our kindergarten, first and second grade, even up to our third grade, teachers are really looking at those products. They received a tremendous amount of professional development this summer, but we were also providing teachers with professional development all of last year to establish a really core literacy team to say, we know that we're struggling with teaching kids to read here at Kane Elementary School. What can we do to be better? And so our teachers invested a tremendous amount of time learning about how it is that kids learn to read. What is it that the science says about how the brain learns, and what do we need to do at Kane Elementary School to meet that need? We also purchased Scholastic magazines. We engaged in the STAR testing. Those are the results that I just shared with you. And we also bought new diagnostic assessments for our students so that we could get more precise. It's kind of like the difference between a doctor taking your temperature versus getting a little bit more specific with more specific tools that help them get a really clear picture of what it is that the child might be struggling with. And so the Heggerty assessment, the letters assessment, really helps us hone in to figure out where is it that this child is struggling. We know that from STAR, they've indicated that they're struggling, but then these assessments tell us way more detail about your child as a reader. We also have our professional learning communities, and we've really strategically formed intervention groups that happen by grade level. So at one point in the day, all students in first grade go to their interventions. If they need reading interventions, that all happens at the same time of the day so that each kid is getting kind of a specialized group of what they need. And then here we are with math. Similarly, you'll see a drop in the number of students that were proficient. So in the fall of 2019, we had 66 students proficient on that math STAR assessment. Now that doesn't mean that those are the same students that will be proficient on the math state test, but we use STAR because it's relatively predictive of how we think children will perform on that New York State test. And so in the fall of 2019, there were 66 students proficient, and then by the fall of 2021, we have 26 students proficient. And again, as we look at indicator 54, this is economically disadvantaged as compared to non-economically disadvantaged. We have a gap of about 53 between the number of students that were proficient and not proficient on that math assessment. So again, a place that we've seen significant loss. But again, as we explore and we make comparisons to how is it that, is Kane unique, or are we seeing that other places are struggling just as much, and that's just part of some of the loss that's happened over the last 2 years. But I think regardless, it's really important that you hear from me that I'm not okay with only 26 students being proficient in math. That we have a lot of work to do, and we need family support to get the work done here at Kane Elementary School. Again, so I know Dr. Mason was going to be on me about this. So what is it that we're doing about it? So it's like, okay, it's not great, right? But what are we doing to make sure that we're changing what we're doing and we're not just sitting back and saying, well, it'll just get better with time? Nope. We've been really strategic. The district has bought us these math workbooks. You may have seen them coming home, or they may be part of your child's experiences, but each child gets 3 different math workbooks to support them with the Eureka math curriculum. Some of these are assessment tools that the teachers can use. Some of them are worksheets that the children can use in their desks, and some of it is homework support or in-class work that they can complete. We've also purchased a product called Reflex Math. It's a computer-based program that helps to kind of identify where the skill sets are. For second graders can use it, but it's typically a product for third, fourth, and fifth that our teachers can utilize to help fill some of the gaps around basic skills that the students might be missing that they can build up in this product called Reflex. We've also purchased a product called Happy Numbers. This is for our pre-K, K, and 1 students, and sometimes our 2nd grade students can use it. And again, it's a very similar sort of product that helps to build some of the skill sets in a game-based way. So it's an exciting way for kids to practice kind of some of their math skills. Our science indicator. So we most recently just took a pre-test in science. So we literally gave them the test that they will take at the end of the school year. We wanted to see how will they do, where are some of those gaps. And I think it's really important. I gave you a sample here. They told me this is a laser. Ooh, it's a laser pointer. This is a sample question here that you can see on your sheet. But one of the things that we know that we found right away before we even scored these assessments is that we realized that the stamina to actually complete the assessment, the sheer number of questions that the kids had to do, they were exhausted. And the teachers were like, I think we need to split this test over 2 days. And then Ms. Turcotte and I say, it can't be over 2 days, it's 1 sitting. So if we're seeing that they're struggling to finish, that they're exhausted, that they're like, please miss, I need to stop, that we need to work on the stamina to complete these tests. Remember, learning on a computer, typing, is very different than taking a test in 1 large sitting. If I'm at home and I can get up to go to the bathroom, or I can get up to go to the cabinet to get something to eat real quick, kids were kind of taking their own breaks. But in school, there's a lot less of that sort of experience for kids, and so we knew that stamina right away was going to be a hardship for our kids. So there's things that the teachers are doing to build that stamina up across the course of the year, and it's important that we saw it in November because we have from now until May to close that gap. We also realized that many of the students were actually struggling to read the science questions and answers. So in our 4th grade, we have about 8 students that are proficient as readers for the 4th grade. So 8 of our students could actually read the 4th grade test in a way that was easy for them to answer the questions. As opposed to if you look at this type of a question, so the question says, the diagrams below show an umbrella on a beach at different times during the day. The diagrams best show how the surrounding conditions affect the umbrella's A, shadow, B, size, C, shape, or D, texture. You can see the sheer amount of reading skills that are required for a question like this. Not only do they have to read the question, but then they have to interpret this diagram here. They have to read through these labels and understand what these words say. And if you're a child that can't actually read what those words say, imagine trying to read this problem with only being able to read every couple of words. The, and, on, the, day. That's a really hard question to do if you're struggling to read. And so we know that reading is a huge part of our science tests and our math tests. That while the math tests are testing students' abilities to do math problems and compute and solve and problem solve, many of the problems are also reading problems because they're asking the children to understand what this problem is saying in a series of steps. So to the teachers in 4th grade are working in their professional learning communities to increase the student stamina with testing. They're setting goals and moving toward those goals. And our teachers, our reading specialists, our special education teachers, we have volunteers through the Reading is Fun program. We have the after-school programming. We are all working together to increase the time with literacy and vocabulary. Because we know there's so much to read on these tests, that if we don't fix the reading crisis that exists in this building, we will struggle on all of these tests. I'm putting a siren here. You can see my red siren here for indicator 160. This is our attendance rate right now. So what we've done, we have, as a celebration, we have had 50 students that have had perfect attendance up to this point. So that's really positive. Shout out for our 50 friends that have been able to do that. But we have some concerns around some of our friends here that have already missed a significant amount of the school year. They've already missed 18 days of school. We're only 50 days in, and they've missed over 18 days. This generally across the bottom represents what our general attendance rate is across the grade levels. And so you're hoping, I would be hoping to see something more like 95%. But here in pre-K, you can see it's 84.8%. 2nd grade, 79.8% daily attendance rate. 5th grade, 81%. And then as we look across the grade level, these are kids that we are worried about that are on a path to potentially be chronically absent because they've missed 5 or more days of school already. And so parents at home, you might be asking, but what about COVID? How has COVID impacted these? What if my child gets quarantined? They can't even come to the school, so what are we supposed to do? And so we've been able to kind of look at the number in a slightly different way. So what we've started to do as a building is start to put in coding systems. While the child is still considered absent from school because they are on quarantine or they have been developed symptoms of COVID-19 and need to stay home while they await a test, we were able to code in our attendance system why some of the children are absent so we can separate that information out for ourselves. One of the things that we've learned is that while we've had about 15 positive COVID cases in the building since the beginning of the school year, we have had to quarantine about 90 students because of direct exposure to someone who tested positive for COVID-19. Of those kids that get exposed, they are held out of school for the duration of the quarantine. So sometimes that's 10 days of school. We've also had about 120 of our students sent home from school due to symptoms of COVID-19, and about 90% of those students go the entire 10 days without being tested for COVID-19 and therefore can't return because of those 10 days. And so that's a pretty significant issue that we have with getting kids back into school and ensuring that their school experience can be the best it can possibly be, whether they're at home trying to log in because of a quarantine or whether they're coming to school or they're awaiting testing. I think one of the things that we know is when children go home, that we disconnect from them as teachers. And it's harder to get them engaged in the experience of school because we really only have an hour or so for tutoring time after school when children have been quarantined. One of the other things you'll start to see is we're making a pledge to do the best. The children bring these pledges home to think about. They're working on them with their teachers, that they're going to agree to attend school every day on time. If they're absent from school, they're going to turn in an excuse note to let us know why it is that they're absent from school. Obviously, we want to be respectful. If your child is symptomatic of something related to COVID, we want them to stay home to keep us all safe and to keep you safe. But at the same time, we also say there's other reasons why kids are being kept home. And we want them in school because we know we need to get them to read, to do the math work that we have, the science work that we have in front of us. Again, helping folks understand what it means to be chronically absent. So we create this warning light system, kind of like a stoplight system of what does it mean to be chronically absent. We've kind of broken that down for folks. And then indicator 94 is about providing 200 hours of extended learning time. You'll see we have a green thumbs up in this area because we're doing really, really great with both our community engagement work, but also with our providing 200 hours of extended learning time. So this past summer, this is when our data comes from, because obviously we haven't had the summer of 2021, we had 40 of our children here at Kane Elementary School as part of our summer enrichment program. That's the summer program that ran from July 12th to August 6th. It goes from 8:30 to about 4:30 every single day, Monday through Friday. And we had, of those 40, 22 of the students from Kane Elementary School attended 80% or more of that summer program. In addition, we knew that some of our kids got closed out. At Kane Elementary School, we knew that some of our kids got closed out of the summer enrichment program, and we wanted to provide them with an additional experience. So we set up a Kane Dragon Summer Camp at Steinmetz Career and Leadership Academy across town. And we had 14 of our students. These were students that were targeted due to low attendance rates during last school year. So we had 14 of our students attend that summer program, and 10 out of the 14 students improved their attendance based on pre-programmed data. And so if they were hovering around a 30% attendance rate before coming to the summer program, they attended over 70% of the time in the summer program that we held. And then currently we have about 50 of our students registered for the 21st Century After School program. This program started in October. It's open for students in grades 3, 4, and 5. That is in person every day after school. And we've offered 12 hours between roughly September 9th to October 15th. And then certainly every day since then, since October 15th, when we really kicked off the program, we've upped our time to basically 3 hours every single day. If you haven't seen, we have some pretty active members as part of our after-school program. They work on some arts and crafts work. Our teachers are really great about tweeting. If you are on Twitter, these are our teachers that help to support and celebrate some of the work that the kids are doing in our after-school program. We also provide morning supervision, so for any of our students that take buses, we bring students up to the classroom from 7:30 until 8 o'clock to provide additional instruction for them so they're not outside waiting on buses. We bring them right into the building to get some extra practice in the morning. So as we kind of come to a close, we might ask, so what can we do as parents and families? And I guess, it's really hard to say for sure what we exactly need people to do. This is part of why we have to think about this together. But I can tell you that when you partner with us and you ensure that your child is coming to school every single day to benefit from the resources and the program that we have at Kane Elementary School, we know that they will be more successful. If you can read, parents will say to me, what can I do? Like, what should I be doing at home? And I say, I'm a die-hard about reading. If you can just read every single night with your child, just 20 minutes. And don't make it torture, make it fun. We're gonna pick out a book for mommy to read. What can we read together? It's easy when they're little and they're in pre-K and they wanna curl up on your lap and read a little book. When they get into 5th grade though, I'm telling you, they wanna read a novel with you and they wanna talk about some of the stuff that they're learning about in their book. And sometimes it's easier to have conversations with your child through the characters in a book than asking questions about what's happening in school. Because sometimes you ask questions about what's happening in school and they'll say, nothing, it's boring. But if you talk about characters in books and how they're getting treated at school, sometimes you'll learn some more things about your own child in that experience. So we always say, read, 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 keep it fun, but try to do this every night with your child. Set it up as part of a bedtime routine. Talk to your child about school. Share with us what's going well and what we can do to improve. So if your child comes home and says, you know what, Mom, I did this 3D printer thing today, it was so cool, it's so helpful for us as teachers and staff to know what they're really loving, and so that we can build more of that. We want to be an engaging, fun place for kids to be too. So we want to make sure we're building in great experiences for your children. I feel like the best days are when kids run into your arms and jump into your arms and say, Mommy, I had the best day today. Let me tell you about everything I learned. And I know as parents that that feels really great too. If you can talk to your friends or your parent network about getting involved in Kane, saying like, I want to sign up for the PTO, why don't you join me too? Let's do this together. We can talk about it together. We're already hanging out. Let's do the PTO and let's create some awesome events for the kids at Kane, for our own kids, but all the other kids here. PTO is great at doing fundraisers for us, hosting events for us, movie nights, pajama nights, after-school activities. These are all things that we are open to doing with families. We just need parents to help us as part of that work. And then again, just help us get involved. We need you desperately to partner with us. We have the PTO that we want to make sure we get up and running. We have parent liaison positions that are still open in our building. We have 2 or 3 positions that we can still hire for. Parents that work 10 to 15 hours a week. And again, I describe them as like party planners. You think we want to do an event like a winter wonderland at Kane Elementary School? Well, let's do it, right? Like I just need someone to say to me, you know what, Carrie, I'll take this on and I'll plan the event for you. And I can get you the kids there. I can talk with parents. I can get people there. But at the same time, I need parents to tell us, you know what I really need in this community? Because my kids have nothing to do on Saturday night. You know what I would love is a movie night where we can watch blank all together as a school community. And we can absolutely host those events here in the building. We just need folks to help us plan it. So again, event planning, community events that we want to hold right in our area. One of the things that we talked about on our community engagement team, we asked the question to our teachers and our parents that were on that committee, on the weekends, like, what do you do? I ask the kids as much as I possibly can, what are you doing this weekend? What are you doing tonight? And a lot of times it's like staying in, watching video games, playing video games, but we're not sure exactly where kids are going on the weekends or what kind of stuff that they're doing. So we're wondering, like, is it because there's nothing to do? Like, should we set something like that up for families? And then again, I just ask that while some of this data feels overwhelming, and it feels very heavy, please don't give up on us as a school. We absolutely will make a difference. We're gonna make sure that we get your kids reading on grade level. We're gonna get them the math skills that they need. We're gonna get off this list. We will. We just need you to not give up on us. We need you to partner with us and to be part of this awesome experience of getting better here at Kane. So I'll open it up for any questions that folks might have. I'll do my best to answer those, but feel free to just kind of brainstorm with us or share any questions that you might have as you saw some of the information here.
Receivership is applied to her building in single area, but we own it as a district community, and we have her back and we shout that to make sure where we're at right now. Brick by brick, we will build that very continued. It's not quickly, rapidly, that we engage, re-engage from a world that's been impacted by COVID and maybe to predict it, but not. But no one. No one is satisfied with the number. And the person driving care is uber focused on making sure where we're at right now is a completely different place. I would say months from now, but Monday and Tuesdays. As a mystery reader in this building, I can tell you, it's electric in the best way possible. It is electric. I see kids genuinely excited because their principal is excited to see that. It's real, it's heartfelt. And it's things that reflect the data, but truth be told, the true data, the real experience when you walk in this world. So if you're a parent in this world, but we welcome you, we want your feedback, and we want to make you a part of that vibe that happens every day. Because your kids are feeling it, and they're blessed because of it. So, no, this is a path that we will, at the end of this path, will be a better place. And this method of great leadership community. Okay. Any questions?
He was giving you wait time.